Valve just filed for a trademark for something called the Steam Frame, and that means we are getting a new device from Valve. And what is it exactly? Could it be a VR headset, a console, a handheld, or something else entirely? Well, I've been digging through the filings, the leaks, the Steam VR updates for hours, and in this video, I'm gonna break it all down. First, the most breaking news, recent trademark filings, the leaks, and what they tell us. Then the history of why this has been a long time coming. After that, the theories pointing to it being a console, and then the theories pointing to it being a VR headset. And finally, my real prediction of what Valve is actually building. So let's jump right into it. So again, officially, there is a trademark application in for Valve for something called the Steam Frame. And what many believe is this means there is new hardware in development and possibly launching sometime very soon. This trademark application isn't speculative, it's a legal filing, and that makes it super worth paying attention to. What makes it even more interesting is Valve didn't just file once, they actually filed twice. The first filing is under Class 9, which is the broad electronics category, and that covers things like computers, peripherals, and software. It's the same category Valve used for the Index headset. And the second filing, which is under Class 28, is reserved for video game apparatus. So essentially things like consoles, controllers, and accessories. Now that doesn't prove whether the Steam Frame is a console or a VR headset. What it shows is Valve wants legal coverage in both directions, and that's why people are speculating. Not because the classes give us certainty, but because they leave the door wide open. It could be a console, it could be a headset, or it could even tie into both. And this all happened within days of another big leak, something called Fremont. Essentially, we got a bunch of specs on what looks like a console-style device, basically a TV-focused PC running SteamOS. According to the Geekbench data, it's built around a semi-custom AMD Hawk-Point 2 CPU, paired with an RX 7600 GPU, no integrated graphics, no shared RAM, a custom Valve motherboard and case, a direct HDMI output for the living room. On top of that, it's expected to ship with a new controller, something called the codename Ibex. Now that controller already has a bunch of speculation behind it, but we're thinking if this was a console, it probably would pair up pretty well together. Now, but at the same time, Steam VR data miners uncovered fresh code that points in the other direction, towards VR. And one of the biggest things is Valve even renamed overlays in the system to frames. So within 1 week, we saw all of this, a trademark filing for the Steam Frame, a leak of the Fremont console, and the Steam VR code suggesting possibly Deckard, which is Valve's long-rumored headset. None of these on their own would be enough, but together the timing feels deliberate, and Valve is lining things up, and the Steam Frame might be at the center of it. Now, I will say Valve has a long history of experimenting with hardware. Sometimes they strike out, and sometimes they completely change the market, and the Steam Frame fits right into that pattern. So let's back up and start with their failures. Back in 2015, Valve pushed the Steam Machine. It was supposed to be a living room PC running on SteamOS, a kind of hybrid console, but the specs were messy, developer support wasn't there, and the whole thing just fizzled out. And then it came time for the Steam controller. It was innovative, it had haptic trackpads and custom layouts, but it never really found the mainstream audience, and it was discontinued a few years later. And then you have the Steam Link, a small streaming box that lets you play PC games on your TV. It was neat, but eventually it got replaced by the Steam Link app. These were all bold experiments, but none of them stuck. And things obviously changed in 2021 with the Steam Deck. This was Valve's first real hardware success, a Linux-based handheld PC. I mean, we all know it ran your entire Steam library thanks to Proton compatibility. It sold super well, it built a strong community, and Valve continues to update it with new hardware revisions. The Steam Deck proved that Valve could not only build hardware, but dominated a space if they aligned directly with their ecosystem. But along that, there's also been a whole nother thread running through the years, Deckard. Since 2021, data miners have found references to a standalone VR headset in the Steam VR code. Leaks pointed to inside-out tracking, wireless operation, and later on, mentions of new controllers codename Roy. And this is coming after the Valve Index has been out for years, but still has a big fan base that still think that a Valve headset would surpass some Meta-branded Quest 3 or Quest 3S, especially for those PC VR fans that aren't really concerned about the standalone functionality. They want to push their PCs and their headsets to the max. And now within the Steam VR code, with overlays being rebranded as frames, that's not random. Those updates clearly point towards something being a VR device. At least that's what it seems like. So when the Steam Frame trademark appeared, it didn't come out of thin air. Again, Valve has already built the Steam Deck a proven hit. They've had years of VR headset rumors surrounding the Deckard, and now with Fremont links pointing towards a console, all these paths are colliding. So that's why the Steam Frame feels like the next chapter in the story that Valve has been building for over a decade. And this all sets the stage for what comes next. And that brings us to the theories. Is Steam Frame really a console? Is it a Deckard rebrand as a VR headset? Or is it something bigger that combines both? So let's break down the possibilities. Given Valve's history with hardware, the real question is whether Steam Frame will follow the path of the Steam Deck, a huge success, or the Steam Machine, a complete failure. So one of the strongest theories is this is Valve's second attempt at a living room console. And that's where Fremont comes in. Since all of the leaks showing from Geekbench are all very PC-oriented benchmarks, it doesn't really look like a VR headset from that perspective. Obviously, it looks like Valve is putting together a proper console box, and some people have even speculated the name Frame could hint at something modular, kind of like a building block design of like swappable parts so that you can upgrade a console over time. Think of like a custom PC, except for a lot more module. So that's kind of what Frame could mean. Again, instead of being fixed in a box like a PlayStation or Xbox, and that definitely fits with Valve's history of experimenting with PC-styled flexibility, but reimagined again specifically for a living room console. Still, whether that pans out, the core of the leak points to the Fremont being a console-like system. So if Fremont is the hardware platform, the Steam Frame could be the brand that wraps it. It would give Valve a way to re-enter the living room market, a second shot at what Steam Machine failed to do, only this time they would be going in with much stronger momentum. I mean, it is just a different time than it was way back when. And maybe they now have a clearer sense of how to make that hardware actually stick. Now, the other major theory is that the Steam Frame is not a console at all. It's actually Valve's long-rumored standalone VR headset, better known by its codename Deckard. And this thing has been mythical. Again, people have been speculating about this and rumoring it for so long. I get all my Twitter updates from Sadly It's Bradley so that I can keep up with when this thing is coming out, and he feels like this could be the kind of precipice of this coming out very soon. Now, a lot of the Fremont leaks don't point towards this, but the main evidence here, again, is the fact that overlays have been changed to frames. There is a very good chance that this is linked to a VR headset. And the controllers are another piece. Two names keep surfacing in the drives and tool chains: Roy and Ebix. Roy is the VR motion controller associated with the Deckard. Ebix, again, looks like a gamepad that pairs with Valve's possible living room push, and both names have shown up in the Steam VR driver digs, and they've been reported on multiple outlets that track Valve code. And again, this is where the Steam Frame trademark timing matters. The filing appeared alongside that Frame's rename and those new VR capabilities in the beta. And that cluster suggests Valve is preparing for a headset announcement, not just locking down a name. Several reports also echo that connection and directly cite the beta strings. So that's the strongest VR side read of the evidence that we have today. Next, we'll weigh it against the console read, and I'll give you a call on how I think Valve will actually roll this out. So if you zoom out, the simplest way to read all of this is Fremont and Frame are probably not the same thing. They're different devices on different paths, but being developed in sync. Fremont is the road to Steam's console. The Geekbench results, the custom AMD Hawk Point 2 CPU, the RX 7600 GPU, and the Ibex gamepad, those are all classic console DNA. It looks like Valve's second shot at the living room after the Steam Machine. Steam Frame, on the other hand, looks way more like a VR play. The trademark filings that cover broader electronics and game devices but SteamVR beta changes, the ROY controller references, and the rebrands to overlays being to frames all point towards Deckard. SteamFrame, I think, would be most likely the product name of that headset, or at least the OS. So instead of choosing between the console theory and the VR theory, the real prediction that I have is that Valve is lining both up together. We have a standalone VR headset branded SteamFrame and a living room console, codenamed Fremont, we'll see what they actually name it, and possibly controllers that might even bridge them. In fact, the console and the headset might even work together, so we could see a drop from Valve that would be absolutely massive. It would be a console living room Steam OS box and a headset as a spatial gaming device that connects to it. That way, Valve isn't just dropping one piece of hardware, they are building a platform. And if this is true, it'll be Valve's biggest hardware push since the Steam Deck. So what do you guys think? Leave it in the comments. And of course, as always, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.